I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Palau.
Mr. President, Secretary General, Excellencies, colleagues, we convene here at a fragile and precarious time in the world. Since the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas, an attack that triggered a traumatic and heavy response from Israel, we're now seeing devastating, heartbreaking events tragically unfold in the Gaza Strip. Palau unequivocally condemns the terrorist attacks on Israel and expresses our deepest condolences to Israel and the families of those who lost their lives or were injured, and call for the immediate release of hostages. The brutal fighting between Israel and Hamas that ensued has already taken the lives of thousands of civilians in the Gaza Strip, over 8,000 people and mounting, and inflicted wrenching misery on both sides. We similarly extend our sincere condolences to the families of the victims in Gaza and for the loss of UN staff and personnel. Mr. President, it would be remiss of us not to mention that Hamas intentionally puts the Palestinian people in harm's way by storing weapons and command posts under civilian hospitals, schools, mosques, and buildings. The suffering of the citizens of Gaza isn't incidental to Hamas, it's essential. It's part and parcel of their propaganda. Hamas has repeatedly declared opposition to a two-state solution and to any negotiations, with their stated goal to annihilate Israel completely. So how does one negotiate with an entity that wants to annihilate Jews from the face of the earth? Using the old tropes of Jewish occupation as a root cause of Hamas's barbarism doesn't in any way justify Hamas's murderous actions, nor its continued use of unguided missiles sent into Israel. Invading civilian homes, terrorizing civilians, murdering young people at a concert, kidnapping babies, torturing them in a well-orchestrated attack that was probably meant to do exactly what it's doing now. Hamas is content to sacrifice the Palestinian people as they try to turn the world against Israel. It is for this reason that Palau voted to support the Canadian amendment to condemn Hamas. Colleagues, we can condemn the terrorist actions of Hamas and call for a humanitarian response and restraint from Israel in Gaza. These are not mutually exclusive events, but because of the deep wounds of this region, it's often posed as an either-or, a proposition that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But this leads to a downward spiral of hatred and extremism and perpetuates conflict and despair. Because this amendment to condemn Hamas failed and the resolution lacked language calling for the release of hostages, Palau abstained on the resolution. However, Mr. President, while we maintain that Israel has the right, if not the obligation, to defend itself, it should do so in accordance with regard for the safety of innocent civilians and in accordance with international law. Food, water, medicine, and other essential humanitarian assistance must be able to flow into Gaza and to the people who need them. We commend efforts by many member states and UN agencies who've stepped up to help in the past few weeks. While dozens of trucks have passed through the Rafah crossing, hundreds more must follow to meet the dire needs of over 2 million people. Palau also joins calls by others for humanitarian pauses in order to get more people out of Gaza and out of harm's way. We are all too familiar with the atrocities of war, Mr. President, but war has its rules, rules that we all agreed to as members of this esteemed body, and in the midst of fighting, we must not forget our humanity. We urge for restraint to allow for certain events to happen that will remind us of this humanity, so that innocent people, including children, may be relocated to safer areas, so that hungry, thirsty, shell-shocked people can get some relief, so that injured civilians may get treatment, so that both sides may mourn and bury their dead. Palau calls on all parties to remember the sanctity of innocent human life. So many of those who've been killed are women and children, innocent children who've grown up in an already challenging environment. Many of those killed didn't have any recourse or anywhere to go. We should not forget that a Palestinian mother will mourn her child the same way an Israeli mother does, and vice versa. In looking ahead, as the Middle East rebuilds from this conflict, as it has done many times before, we urge for the resumption of talks for a two-state solution. Our concern is that if the status quo continues, it may ultimately result in a situation where Israel may win the battle but lose the peace. It will result in yet another generation of retribution, extremism, and hatred, perpetuating this ongoing conflict that has plagued the Middle East for far too long. Our international community must redouble efforts to bring back the peace process. A durable solution with two people, Israelis and Palestinians, two democratic states, living side by side in peace, security, and dignity within mutually recognized borders is necessary for a lasting peace. The distinguished delegate from the UK said it well. We call for love over hate, light over darkness. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Israel and with the people of Palestine. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Palau